All right. So then I rode my bike back to Nepal, to Kathmandu, and then I said, okay, cool, well, let's do the Everest trek, but not on the bike. So I took a bus over to the Everest trek, which is like a full day bus ride, not very fun, because it took forever and was frustrating because there was only enough, the road was only wide enough for one bus at a lot of times. So the bus would have to stop and then go backwards and let the other guy go. And then I went to some town and was hung out with a kid at the hotel I stayed at. Had some of these like alcoholic, like some kind of green alcohol drink, and he sold me a big thing of hash. And I went and I hiked the Everest trek, and I went one day in up to some hill top and looked at the trail, and I don't know what happened. I just didn't have the motivation to hike anymore. I said, you know what, I just want to read. I don't care about seeing Everest. I don't want to do this Everest trek. So I hiked back, and I took the bus all the way back to Kathmandu, and I ended up getting a hotel room. And I was the only guy staying at this hotel for like $1 a night or something, and I read for 2 months. At this bookstore in Kathmandu, I found the Aromatherapy book, which was like written by like spirits. And I thought it was like the history of everything. So I thought it looked interesting. So I read it cover to cover in a month. But I was stoned off my ass when I did it because I looked outside of my hotel room and I saw this really big marijuana plant. So I uprooted it and put it in my room, and I was smoking off that. So I was stoned the whole time. And so I'd stay up all night reading the Randy book, and then I'd go to some some like restaurant that was pretty close on the main street. And it was all these expats at the restaurant. I guess it was good American food or something. And I'd see the same people every morning sitting at the same table. And then I'd go home and sleep until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon because I'd stay up all night. And then I went to the gym for like 2 hours. I rode my bike across some main street, the street you would take to go towards Potara to the west, and lining the whole street on the northern side was marijuana plants like 15 feet high that I could have uprooted any of those and smoked. It was really cool, but I didn't have to because I had my own back home. And then I went to this gym, and there was this Tibetan guy there who I was like could talk with a little bit, and so I did that for 2 months. Then I read a bunch of other books, but I can't remember, like one on psychology. I can't remember any of the specific ones though. But yeah, I did that for 2 months, and then I used up my 5 months in Nepal. So I booked a tour of Tibet, and so we got in some bus and drove in the bus to the edge of Nepal, up through the jungle until we actually went into Tibet, and went up until we were in the Yente Plano, where there's no trees, nothing. And driving across Tibet was amazing. At one point, I saw, like, we went through some valley in the Yente Plano that was littered with ruins of big buildings, like multi-level buildings everywhere. It was clearly it used to be some metropolis. It was the biggest ruins of a city I've ever seen. And then we continued, and we saw 2 guys bike touring across. It looked fun on this dirt road. It was kind of like almost a 4-wheel drive or a trail at some point. So we went over a pass, and the highest point was like 15,500 feet or something like this. But that wasn't the highest I've ever been, because I think that pass was like 17,000 on the Annapurna circuit. Then we went down, and Tibetans it was definitely culture shock being in Tibet, because Tibetans were living so primitively. But they looked happy. It looked like I was just going back in time. And they were definitely like a new race. They had really curly, thick hair and really dark skin, and Tibetans had a different facial complexion than anybody else. And then we got down into the lower part of the anticlinal part of Tibet. After we went across some higher part, we looked over, and it was like plains. It was like hitting the Rockies, plains until you hit the Rockies. So it was plains until you hit the Himalayas, and our guide showed us which one Mount Everest was, and it was one of the mountains right there. So I guess the northern side of Mount Everest is just flat plains. And so then we went down into the lower part, went across, and I guess there's more Chinese in Tibet than Tibetans. There's like 7 million Tibetans and 9 million Chinese, at least when I was there back in '98. And I could see all the Chinese buildings were very distinct from the Tibetan. Tibetan was just hovels, but the Chinese buildings were really ugly. I don't like the style because they were all tiled with these blue tiles, looked kind of tacky. But anyway, the tour I was on was like a Buddhist tour, so Buddhist temple touring tour. So we went on a bunch of detours, and the guy gave us tours of the Buddhist temples, and I didn't really understand anything he said. He was talking too fast and had bad pronunciation, but it was definitely interesting to check these places out. There were like these just beautiful palaces in the middle of nowhere, like in the middle of just plains of nothing. Just you maybe have like kind of a half-dried river with some trees, but it was pretty though. And then we continued into Lhasa and went into Lhasa. And before we went in, there was some of these giant carved like Buddhas inside the rock, kind of like the ones that the Taliban destroyed. And did a few tours of palaces there. We did a tour of a Tibetan monastery where all of the monks, like there were like 50 monks at least, or 100, lots of them, all talking to each other in this big field. Like I guess they were debating, doing religious debate, and they talk, and I guess when they make their point, they go like this. So they're all like, and like moving around, kind of like Tai Chi dancing, and then they go like that. And everybody talking really loud, like you're in this loud cafeteria or something. And so I guess the Chinese were allowing that to happen. It was other people's money who was paying for these temples and stuff. But then we did the tour of the Potala Palace, which was amazing because there's this natural hill in the middle of the valley, and where Lhasa is, there's this natural like hill in the middle of it, and on top of the hill they have this huge palace, gigantic, like as big as the Pentagon or something. And we did the tour of that, and it was beautiful. In the middle of it, on the top of it, there was like they had they had like this room, and like hanging over this other area below it. It was just it was cool architecture. I felt like I was in like a treehouse or something. And then we came down and did some more tours. And I remember noticing that I guess for hundreds of years these Tibetans would do these prayers where they do prostrations, get on their stomach, and then stand up and get on their stomach all around the Potala. And now it was a traffic jam, traffic and roundabouts and everything, and they'd be in the middle of the traffic doing it. They didn't let all the cars get in their way of doing it, and so the cars would just like drive around them. And then I went to get money, and they wouldn't take my Visa card, and I didn't have any traveler's checks, so there was no way I could get money. So I was going to ride my bike across China to Korea to teach English, but and I should have done that because the guy I was with could have gotten me a visa, but the people I was with like freaked out, and they thought that they would get in trouble because I guess the tour guide told them if I didn't leave them or something like that, or if I did leave them. So I decided to just fly back to Nepal. I shouldn't have done that, but I did that. And to get the money, I sold all this stuff I had, like a altitude watch and all this other stuff. And so I was just asking tourists to buy stuff, and I set my stuff down in front of a hotel where all these Singaporeans were getting out of a bus, next to all the Tibetans who were selling trinkets. And all the Tibetans, I guess, felt sorry for me, so they all gave me money. All the Tibetan street vendors pulled together and gave me like $30 between them. So I was like, thank you. And so I took my stuff up and left, and ended up making just enough money to get a plane ticket back. So I took a plane back to Nepal, which I shouldn't have done. I should have just used that money to ride across China, or to where I could have gotten money in the next city over. But I rode the plane back, and I was in Nepal, and we flew right by Mount Everest, which was about the same level as the plane. And then I was in Kathmandu for a week. I hung out with some people over at the Kathmandu Center of Healing. And then got a plane to Korea. So that's Korea.